You know, in the high stakes world of healthcare, precision is absolutely everything. You've spent years honing your medical skills to be incredibly exact. But here's a question: does your English communication match that same level of precision? In this explainer, we're going to help you sharpen your language to make sure it's just as professional and effective as your clinical expertise. So let's just jump right in with a really important question. Does your English truly reflect your medical expertise? I mean, you've spent years, countless hours mastering your craft. The whole goal here is to make sure your language doesn't just get the point across, but that it projects the exact same level of authority and confidence you feel in your clinical skills. And here's the thing. It's almost never about those huge, glaring mistakes that stop communication in its tracks. Nope. It's usually the small, little grammar mistakes that can create what we'll call a confidence gap. This is that subtle but really significant gap between how incredibly skilled you are and maybe how skilled you sound to other people. And believe me, this isn't just some abstract idea. The impact is very real. These little errors can actually influence how you're perceived by pretty much everyone you work with. You know, from a patient's family who's looking to you for clarity and reassurance, all the way to a supervisor who's evaluating your performance. So why does this precision matter so much? Okay, let's be super clear about something. We are not talking about errors that cause medical misunderstandings. Your colleagues, they probably know exactly what you mean. No, this is all about professional polish. It's about closing that confidence gap and making sure your language is as sharp, clear, and authoritative as your medical judgment. All right, so how do we actually do this? How do we build that precision? Well, we're going to focus on a toolkit of 6 key areas where, honestly, small changes can make a huge difference. We're going to dive into tiny words like articles and prepositions, explore how certain words just naturally pair up in medical settings, and fine-tune some grammar points like comparatives and subject-verb agreement. Let's kick things off with the smallest words that I promise you can make the biggest difference. We're talking about articles and prepositions. Think of them as the grammatical glue of English. Getting them right is a total game changer for sounding fluent and professional. Just look at this. See how one tiny missing letter completely changes the feel of the sentence? It was not very easy shift. It just sounds a little clunky, a little incomplete to a native speaker's ear. But by popping in that one small word, a, the sentence suddenly becomes complete, natural, and correct. It's such a small fix with a huge impact on clarity. Here is a super simple rule of thumb to keep in your back pocket. If you're mentioning a singular, countable noun for the very first time, like a patient or a procedure, you almost always gotta pop an or an in front of it. You save the for when you're talking about something specific that everyone already knows about, like the patient we just discussed. Okay, let's switch gears to prepositions. Now this one is subtle, but it is so important, especially in your reports. A patient is injured by the thing that caused the injury. That's the agent, like a gunshot. They're injured with the tool or the instrument used, like a knife. Using by here is the precise, professional, and correct choice. You know, some prepositional phrases are they're set in stone. You just gotta learn them. Think of them like little language Legos that always stick together in the same way. A patient is always in a stable condition. An injury is in the chest. You meet someone at the reception desk. Mastering these common combos is such a quick way to sound more fluent. All right, so we've looked at those tiny little building blocks of grammar. Now let's zoom out and talk about the words themselves. We're shifting from grammar rules to word choice, focusing on the specific vocabulary and phrases that really mark you as a true professional in a medical context. Okay, so take a look at this sentence. The patient had a gunshot injury. Now, don't get me wrong, this makes total sense, and injury is a perfectly fine word. But it's not the standard term that medical professionals use in this specific context, and that small difference really matters. This is a perfect example of something called collocation, which is just a fancy way of saying words that are best friends. They just belong together. In medical English, the standard partner for gunshot or stab is wound. So saying gunshot wound signals a deep familiarity with clinical terminology, and it just adds that extra layer of precision. And here are a few more of these powerhouse phrases. Surgeons perform surgery. A patient's condition deteriorates. They don't just wake up, they regain consciousness. They sustain injuries. Learning these standard phrases will make your communication sound so much more natural and professional. Really, this is all about leveling up your vocabulary. So instead of saying a patient got worse, the clinical term is deteriorated. A family problem might be recorded in a report as a domestic dispute. A regular shift is more precisely a routine shift. See? These small upgrades can elevate your entire professional tone. Okay, last but not least, let's tackle 2 grammar points that are absolutely critical, especially when it comes to your written communication. When you're writing up patient notes or handover reports, these little details make a huge difference in clarity and professionalism. Oh man, I see this one all the time. But the good news is it is such an easy fix. Here's the rule. We never, ever say very worse or very better in English. It's just not a thing. It's an instant giveaway that something's a little off. So what do you say instead? Simple. The magic word is much. The patient is feeling much better. The situation became much worse. It's a simple swap that makes your English instantly more accurate and way more natural. And hey, much isn't your only tool in the toolbox. You can also use words like far, significantly, or considerably to add emphasis to these comparisons. The main takeaway is this. Very hangs out with regular adjectives, like very difficult. But when you're comparing things like much more difficult, that's when you bring in these other words. All right, and to wrap up our grammar section, a quick but crucial reminder about subject-verb agreement. This is a must for professional writing. It's pretty simple, right? One patient continues to improve, not continue. And watch out for those uncountable nouns, like information or advice. They're always treated as singular. So the information is crucial. Okay, so let's put it all together and see what it looks like in action. Check out this sentence. See that? We've got our perfect collocation, gunshot wound. We've got our fixed phrase, in a stable condition. And we have that correct comparative, considerably better. This is exactly the kind of clear, precise, and professional communication that closes that confidence gap. So at the end of the day, this isn't about becoming some kind of grammar nerd. It's all about building your confidence. It's about making sure your words are as powerful and as respected as your actions. It's about closing that confidence gap for good. All right, that brings us to the end of this explainer. So I want to leave you with a question. Looking back at these 6 areas we covered, what is one thing, just one, that you're going to consciously focus on this week? Maybe it's using gunshot wound instead of injury, or maybe it's just dropping very worse from your vocabulary. Because choosing just one little thing to work on, that's how real progress starts. We'll see you next time.